Imagine for a moment a quiet summer afternoon. The sun is tilting low in the sky, casting long golden shadows across a field of tall grass. The air is perfectly still, smelling of warm earth and wild clover. In this peaceful space, a single monarch butterfly appears, dancing on the invisible currents of the air. Its movement is not frantic or hurried. Instead, it moves with a soft, rhythmic grace, its wings opening and closing like the steady beating of a tiny heart. These wings, stained in deep shades of burnt orange and bordered by velvet black, look almost like pieces of stained glass drifting through the light. This is the world of the monarch, a world defined by gentle rhythms and the quiet persistence of nature. As we begin our journey together through the life and travels of this remarkable creature, I invite you to settle deeply into your bed. Feel the support of the mattress beneath you and the softness of the pillows cradling your head. If you find comfort in these whispered lessons of the natural world, you might take a brief moment to subscribe or like this video. It is a simple, quiet way to support our sleepy science community and ensure these stories continue to reach those who need rest. But for now, let the outside world fade away. Take a slow, deliberate breath in, feeling the cool air fill your lungs, and then let it out even more slowly, releasing any tension held in your shoulders or your jaw. You are safe, you are comfortable, and there is nothing you need to do but listen. The monarch butterfly is a creature of immense mystery. To look at one, you might see only fragility, a paper-thin insect that a single raindrop might ground. Yet, within this small frame, which weighs no more than a single petal, lies one of the most incredible endurance stories on our planet. They are voyagers embarking on a trek that spans thousands of miles, crossing the vast landscapes of North America to find a specific grove of trees they have never seen before. It is a journey that requires strength, navigation, and a deep connection to the earth itself. To understand how such a delicate being can achieve such a monumental feat, we must first look at the way they are made. We must look closely at the architecture of their wings and the brilliant colors that define them. Their beauty is not merely for show. It is a complex language, a suit of armor, and a specialized tool for flight. Let us begin by looking at the physical structure of this wanderer, starting with the very scales that give the monarch its name and its strength. Scientifically, this butterfly is known as Danaus plexippus. It is a name that feels soft and rhythmic, much like the gentle, slow-motion flutter of its wings against a summer breeze. When you look closely at a monarch, you realize that those vibrant colors are not painted onto a solid surface. Instead, the wings are covered in thousands of microscopic scales arranged in neat, overlapping rows, much like the shingles on the roof of a tiny, quiet cottage. These scales are actually modified hairs, and they serve many purposes beyond their beauty. They help the butterfly regulate its body temperature, absorbing the warmth of the early morning sun to fuel its muscles, and they provide the wings with a specialized texture that allows air to flow smoothly over them as they glide. The most striking feature, of course, is that brilliant sunset orange framed by thick veins of velvet black. In the natural world, beauty often carries a hidden message, and for the monarch, this color is a form of aposematism, a biological warning signal. To a hungry bird or a wandering predator, those bright orange wings act as a visual stop sign. They announce to the world, "I am not a safe snack." This is not a bluff. Because of the specific plants the monarch consumes during its earliest days, its body contains natural toxins that are harmless to the butterfly, but incredibly bitter and dangerous to anything that might try to eat it. A bird that ignores this warning soon learns a vivid lesson, forever associating that specific shade of orange with a very unpleasant experience. In this way, the monarch's vivid appearance acts as a silent, colorful shield, protecting it as it drifts peacefully through the meadows and over the treetops. Beneath these wings, the monarch's body is divided into 3 soft sections: the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. It possesses 6 legs, though at first glance you might only see 4. The front pair is small and tucked up close to the head, used more for tasting and sensing the world than for walking. It is a highly specialized body, designed for one thing above all else: movement. Every part of its physical structure is tuned to the rhythm of the wind and the pull of the horizon. But before this creature ever took to the sky, before it possessed these magnificent wings or its chemical armor, it began as something much smaller and much quieter. The life of a monarch is a cycle of constant becoming, a series of transformations that are as miraculous as the migration itself. This long journey does not begin with flight, but with a search. It begins with a mother butterfly, her wings perhaps a bit frayed at the edges from her own travels, moving with singular purpose through a field of wildflowers. She is not looking for nectar to drink, but for a very specific cradle for her young. As she lands softly on a leaf, she is using her legs to taste the plant, searching for a chemical signature that tells her she has found the one and only place where her story can begin again. She moves through the meadow with a quiet, deliberate grace, a flicker of orange and black dancing against the deep, saturated green of the midsummer grasses, while other insects might be drawn to the sweetest nectar or the broadest shade. This female monarch is searching for something very specific. Her entire focus is narrowed down to a single genus of plant, Asclepias, more commonly known as milkweed. To most of the animal kingdom, milkweed is a plant to be avoided. Its sticky, latex-like sap is bitter and filled with complex chemicals called cardenolides, which can be toxic to the hearts of many creatures. But for the monarch, milkweed is not a threat. It is home. It is the only place where her story can continue. As she glides from stem to stem, she performs a delicate, invisible ritual. She lands softly on the surface of a leaf, her wings shivering slightly to maintain her balance. She isn't just resting. She is using specialized sensors on her legs, chemoreceptors that allow her to taste the plant simply by standing on it. She is looking for a very specific chemical signature, a botanical confirmation that this leaf belongs to the milkweed family and that it contains the right balance of nutrients and defenses. If the plant doesn't meet her exacting standards, she takes flight again, her wings beating in a slow, rhythmic pulse as she continues her search. When she finally finds the perfect leaf, usually one that is young, tender, and Tucked away from the harshest rays of the sun, she moves to its underside. Here, sheltered from the rain and the prying eyes of birds, she arches her abdomen and deposits a single tiny egg. She does not lay her eggs in large, crowded clusters. Instead, she chooses to leave just one or two on a single plant, ensuring that when the time comes, her offspring will have plenty of space and enough food to thrive without competing with its siblings. This egg is a marvel of biological engineering. It is no larger than a pinhead, creamy white or pale yellow, and shaped like a tiny pointed dome. If you were to look at it through a magnifying glass, you would see a series of delicate vertical ridges carved into its surface, making it look like a precious microscopic jewel. It is glued firmly to the leaf with a fast-drying natural adhesive, so strong that even a summer thunderstorm cannot dislodge it. For 3 to 5 days, the egg sits in the stillness of the garden, a tiny silent promise of the life to come. Inside, a complex transformation is already taking place. What began as a few simple cells is rapidly organizing into a living creature. As the days pass, the top of the egg begins to darken, turning a deep, translucent gray. This is the head of the tiny larva inside, pressed against the inner wall of the shell. The bond between the monarch and the milkweed is one of the most famous examples of coevolution in the natural world. This plant provides everything the monarch needs, not just sustenance, but a unique form of protection that will last a lifetime. In these quiet moments before hatching, the egg is perfectly still, resting in the humid air of the meadow. Then, with a slow and steady effort, the tiny creature inside begins to chew its way out. It consumes its own shell first, a nutrient-rich meal that provides the energy it needs for its very first moments of life. As it crawls out onto the vast green expanse of the milkweed leaf, the tiny larva, the caterpillar, begins its journey of incredible growth. It is small, almost invisible to the naked eye, but it possesses an appetite that will soon transform it entirely. The world of the newborn caterpillar is small, limited at first to the single green leaf where it took its first breath. At this stage, it is barely the size of a mosquito, almost translucent, with a tiny black head that seems slightly too large for its body. But despite its fragile appearance, the monarch larva is a creature of singular purpose. Its life is now defined by a simple rhythmic cycle, eating and growing. Because its external skin or cuticle is somewhat rigid and does not stretch significantly, the caterpillar must undergo a series of transformations to accommodate its rapidly expanding body. These developmental stages are known as instars, and the monarch will pass through 5 of them in a span of just 10 to 14 days. As you settle deeper into your blankets, imagine the quiet focus of this tiny creature. In its first instar, the caterpillar is so small that it doesn't eat through the entire leaf. Instead, it grazes on the surface, creating tiny circular window panes in the green tissue. But soon, it becomes too large for its skin. It stops eating and remains perfectly still for several hours, often tucking itself away on the underside of a leaf. During this quiet interval, it spins a small silk mat to anchor its legs and begins the process of molting. A new, larger skin has already formed beneath the old one. With a series of gentle, rhythmic pulses, the old skin splits behind the head, and the caterpillar slowly crawls out, soft and vulnerable, leaving its former self behind like a discarded garment. The growth that follows is one of the most staggering examples of development in the entire animal kingdom. If a human baby grew at the same rate as a monarch caterpillar, it would reach the size of a school bus in less than 2 weeks. By the time the caterpillar reaches its third and fourth instars, the iconic pattern begins to emerge, vibrant, alternating gaze of yellow, black, and white. These colors are not just for show. They are a bold visual language, a warning to the rest of the world that this small creature is not as defenseless as it appears. In its fifth and final instar, the caterpillar is a masterpiece of biological efficiency. It has grown to nearly 2 inches in length and has increased its original birth weight by about 2,000 times. It now possesses 2 pairs of black filaments, often mistaken for antennae, at both the front and rear of its body. These filaments are sensitive to touch, helping the caterpillar navigate its environment as it moves with a slow, undulating grace. The sound of a group of fifth instar caterpillars feeding in a quiet room is said to resemble the soft, steady patter of a very light rain, a gentle, rhythmic scraping of mandibles against leaf tissue. At this peak stage of growth, the caterpillar is a true eating machine, consuming an entire milkweed leaf in a matter of minutes. It works tirelessly, fueled by an ancient instinct to store as much energy as possible for the great change that lies ahead. But as it devours the green leaves, it is doing more than just fueling its muscles and building its fat reserves. It is also engaging in a sophisticated form of chemical harvesting. The milkweed plant, while providing life-giving nutrients, also contains a secret, a potent defense that the caterpillar is carefully sequestering within its own tissues. Every bite taken during these final days of the larval stage is a step toward becoming one of the most well-protected travelers in the natural world, preparing the way for a defense mechanism that will shield it long after it leaves the milkweed behind. The milkweed plant has a formidable defense mechanism, a sticky white sap filled with complex chemicals called cardenolides, or cardiac glycosides. To almost any other creature, these substances are highly toxic. If ingested by a bird or a small mammal, they can interfere with the rhythm of the heart, causing distress or even death. This is why most insects avoid the milkweed, leaving its lush leaves untouched. But the monarch has spent millions of years engaged in a quiet evolutionary dance with this plant. Through a subtle but profound change in its genetic makeup, a specific mutation in a single protein, the monarch has rendered itself immune to the milkweed's poison. As the caterpillar feeds, it does not simply digest the cardenolides. It carefully sequesters them. It gathers these molecules and stores them within its own body tissues, particularly in its skin and, later, in its wings. It is a remarkable feat of biological engineering. The caterpillar becomes a living vessel for the very toxins meant to deter it. This chemical armor is invisible to the eye, but it is incredibly effective. A bird that attempts to eat a monarch caterpillar will immediately experience a bitter, unpleasant taste, and, shortly after, a feeling of sickness. It is a lesson the predator will never forget. This is the true power of those vibrant yellow and black stripes we discussed earlier. They are a visual label for the chemical shield hidden within. What is perhaps most incredible is that this protection is permanent. The toxins gathered during these few weeks of frantic eating will remain with the monarch for the rest of its life. They will survive the total breakdown of the body that occurs during metamorphosis, persisting through the transition from larva to adult. When the butterfly finally emerges and takes to the sky, it carries the essence of the milkweed in its wings, a lifelong insurance policy against the dangers of the world. But for now, the caterpillar's time as a consumer is drawing to a close. After days of constant feeding, a subtle shift occurs in its behavior. It becomes restless. For the first time in its life, it loses its appetite for milkweed. It begins to crawl away from the plant that has been its entire world, moving with a newfound purpose. It is searching for a sturdy branch, a hidden twig, or perhaps the underside of a garden fence. Somewhere safe, somewhere sheltered from the wind and the rain. This wandering phase can last for several hours as the caterpillar scouts for the perfect location. It is looking for a place where it can remain undisturbed for the next 2 weeks. Once it finds the right spot, the caterpillar slows its pace. It begins to spin a small, sturdy pad of white silk, pressing its head against the surface repeatedly until the silk is thick and secure. This is the button, a tiny anchor that will hold the weight of everything the caterpillar is about to become. With its final task as a larva complete, the caterpillar turns around and firmly grasps the silk button with its rear legs, letting go of the surface with its front legs. It begins to lower itself, slowly and gracefully, into a hanging position. This is the beginning of a deep, transformative quiet, a moment of stillness before the most profound change of all, as the caterpillar hangs there, suspended by that single sturdy silk button. It curls its body into a perfect, gentle J. This shape is iconic, a silent signal that the final stage of its larval life has arrived. It might stay in this position for several hours, or even a full day, perfectly still. To our eyes, nothing seems to be happening, but inside, the caterpillar is performing a complex series of biological preparations. It is breathing deeply, and its internal fluids are shifting, readying the body for a transition that seems almost impossible. This is a time of great vulnerability, yet there is a profound peace in this suspension. Suddenly, the skin behind the caterpillar's head begins to split. This is the fifth and final time it will shed its skin, but this time is fundamentally different. Instead of another caterpillar emerging, a soft, lime green form begins to reveal itself from within. Through a series of rhythmic, undulating pulses, the caterpillar pushes the old striped skin upward, bunching it up at the top near the silk anchor. It is a delicate, precarious dance. For a few moments, the creature is held only by the strength of its own muscles, until a small, black, hooked structure called the cremaster reaches up and firmly entangles itself into the silk pad. Once secure, the old skin falls away, leaving behind a smooth pendant-like structure. This is the chrysalis. At first, it is soft and somewhat lumpy, but within an hour, it smooths out into a beautiful, waxy shell. The color settles into a breathtaking shade of jade green, a color so vibrant it looks as though it belongs in a jeweler's display. Around the rim and near the base, tiny dots of shimmering gold appear. These aren't just for decoration. These gold spots are thought to be related to the distribution of fluids or the intake of oxygen as the butterfly develops. For now, they look like tiny crown jewels catching the light in the quiet of the garden. Now, we enter the most mysterious phase of all. Inside this jade shell, a process called histolysis begins. The caterpillar's body does not simply grow wings and legs, it almost entirely dissolves. Specialized enzymes begin to break down the muscles, the gut, and the tissues that serve the caterpillar so well during its days of eating milkweed. The interior of the chrysalis becomes a rich, living liquid, a kind of cellular soup. It is a state of total transformation where the old identity is surrendered to make way for the new. Yet, amidst this liquid state, there are tiny clusters of cells called imaginal discs. These cells have been present since the caterpillar was just an embryo inside its egg, lying dormant and waiting for this exact moment. As the rest of the body dissolves, these discs begin to use the surrounding nutrient-rich fluid to build the adult butterfly. They are the blueprints for the wings, the long legs, the complex eyes, and the delicate proboscis. It is a total reconstruction, a complete reimagining of what it means to be alive. For the next 10 to 14 days, the chrysalis hangs in a state of profound stillness. To a passerby, it looks like a leaf or a bud, camouflaged perfectly against the green of the world. But inside, the silence is busy. The liquid is becoming solid. The soup is becoming a masterpiece of symmetry and flight. We must be patient now, just as nature is patient, allowing the time and the quiet for this miracle to finish its work. The garden remains still. The wind whispers through the leaves, and we wait for the first hint that the transformation is complete. The days pass in a quiet, steady rhythm, and eventually the jade-green shell of the chrysalis begins to change. It loses its opaque, waxy luster and starts to become transparent. This is one of the most beautiful sights in the natural world. It is as if a window is slowly being cleaned, revealing the secret work that has been happening inside. Through the thin, clear walls of the casing, you can now see the unmistakable patterns of the monarch. The deep, vibrant orange, the bold black veins, and the delicate white spots. The butterfly is fully formed, packed tightly inside like a masterfully folded piece of origami. Then, usually in the soft light of the early morning, the moment of eclosion arrives. A small horizontal crack appears near the bottom of the chrysalis. With a gentle but firm push, the butterfly forces its way out. It emerges head first, its legs reaching out to grasp the empty shell it just left behind. At this stage, the butterfly looks almost unrecognizable. Its body is thick and heavy, swollen with fluid, while its wings are tiny, damp, and crumpled like wet tissue paper. It looks fragile, but it is exactly where it needs to be. The butterfly now begins a critical process of inflation. It uses its abdomen as a reservoir, pumping a clear fluid called hemolymph through the narrow veins of its wings. You can imagine this as a slow-motion hydraulic system. With every rhythmic pulse, the wings expand, smoothing out the wrinkles and stretching to their full, majestic width. As the wings grow, the butterfly's abdomen visibly shrinks, transferring its life force into the structures that will soon carry it through the air. Once the wings reach their full size, the monarch must remain perfectly still. It hangs from the empty, silver-clear casing of the chrysalis for several hours. This is a time of hardening. The chitin in the wing veins must dry and set, turning the soft, flexible membranes into sturdy, lightweight sails. If the butterfly were to try to fly too soon, its wings might bend or tear. So it waits, swaying gently in the breeze, a living piece of stained glass drying in the sun. In the warmth of a summer afternoon, most monarchs will take their first flight within a few hours of emerging. They will spend their short lives, perhaps 2 to 6 weeks, fluttering from flower to flower, seeking mates and laying eggs to keep the cycle moving. But as the season begins to shift, as the shadows grow a little longer, and the air carries the first faint scent of autumn, a very different kind of butterfly begins to emerge. These are not the short-lived wanderers of July. These individuals are born with a different destiny, one that will take them far beyond the borders of their own garden and into the record books of the animal kingdom. They are part of a special generation, unlike any that came before them in the spring. This special group of butterflies is known to scientists as the Methuselah generation, named after the figure from ancient lore known for his incredibly long life. While their parents and grandparents, born in the heat of June and July, lived for only a few fleeting weeks, these late summer monarchs are destined for something much greater. They will not live for 1 month, but for 7, 8, or even 9 months. It is one of the most remarkable transformations in the natural world, a creature that suddenly, through a shift in its internal chemistry, gains a lifespan nearly 8 times longer than those that came just before it. You might wonder how such a delicate creature can suddenly change its very nature. The secret lies in a biological state called reproductive diapause. In the summer generations, the butterflies emerge from their chrysalis with their reproductive systems ready to go. They spend their energy searching for mates and laying eggs, a process that is physically demanding and accelerates their aging. But for the Methuselah generation, things are different. As they develop inside their jade-green shells, their bodies receive a signal from the world outside. This signal tells them to pause. They emerge in a state of suspended development. Their reproductive organs do not fully mature, and their bodies do not produce the hormones that would normally drive them to seek a mate. Instead of spending their precious energy on the cycle of life and death, they store it. They become biological athletes, focusing every resource they have on survival and flight. This pause acts like a fountain of youth, slowing down their internal clock and allowing them to endure the thousands of miles of travel and the long, cold months of winter that lie ahead. Every drop of nectar they sip from the fading summer flowers is not used for the immediate needs of today, but is tucked away as fat reserves for the journey. They are calmer, more focused, and incredibly resilient. They are the marathon runners of the insect world, born with a single overriding purpose that overrides everything else. They are not distracted by the usual urges of a butterfly's life. They are waiting for the wind to change. This shift doesn't happen by chance. It is triggered by the subtle, beautiful changes in the environment as the earth tilts away from the sun. The butterflies sense the world shifting around them. They notice the days growing shorter and the specific golden angle of the late afternoon sun. They feel the first crisp touch of autumn in the evening air, and they see the milkweed plants beginning to yellow and dry. These gentle cues act as a silent alarm clock, waking an ancient instinct buried deep within their DNA. As you settle deeper into your covers, imagine these orange-winged travelers sensing that same quiet shift in the air, preparing themselves for a journey they have never taken, to a place they have never seen. The world is full of invisible signals, subtle changes that we might miss in our busy lives. But to the monarch, they are as clear as a ringing bell. The most powerful of these signals is the sun. As the earth continues its slow, rhythmic tilt, the sun appears lower in the sky each day at noon. This is not just a change in light, it is a change in geometry. The monarchs possess specialized photoreceptors in their complex eyes that can detect the specific angle of the sun's rays with incredible precision. When the sun fails to reach a certain height in the sky, a point known as the solar declination, a message is sent through their nervous system. It is time. The golden light of late August and September, which feels so nostalgic and peaceful to us, is a functional map for them. It tells them, with mathematical certainty, that the window of summer is closing and the path to the south is opening. Coupled with the changing light is the cooling of the earth itself. You might notice, as you prepare for sleep, how the air in your room settles, becoming still and cool. In the wild, the butterflies feel the same transition. The nights begin to dip into lower temperatures, and the morning dew stays on the leaves a little longer, reflecting the pale morning light. These cooler temperatures act as a physical catalyst. While the summer generations thrived in the heat, using the sun's warmth to fuel their rapid life cycles, the Methuselah generation uses the cooling air as a cue to change their behavior. They become quiet and more stationary, hanging from the undersides of leaves as the stars come out. Their metabolism begins to slow, matching the rhythm of the cooling soil beneath them. This cooling is not a threat, but a guide, whispering that the nectar will soon be gone and the time for stationary living has ended. Take a moment now to notice the stillness around you. Just as the butterflies find a quiet branch to rest upon before their great journey, you can find that same peace in your own space. Feel the weight of your body against the mattress, the soft texture of your sheets, and the slow, steady rise and fall of your chest. There is no rush. There is only the present moment, much like the quiet, expectant pause the monarch takes before its first southward flight. The world outside may be vast and the journey long, but for now, there is only the breath and the silence. In these final days before departure, the monarchs are undergoing a profound physical preparation. They are no longer the flighty, erratic dancers of the midsummer garden. They become more deliberate, more focused. Their bodies are becoming heavier, not with age, but with the vital fuel they will need to cross continents. They move with a quiet intensity, gathering in small groups on the edges of forests or in the middle of meadows, waiting for the perfect atmospheric conditions. They are watching the sky in their own way, sensing the shifting barometric pressure and feeling for the specific northern winds that will lift them up. They are preparing their wings for thousands of miles of work, ready to trade the familiar fields of their birth for a world they have never seen, yet somehow already know. As the butterflies gather, their primary focus shifts to a singular, vital task, fueling. This period of their life is defined by a deep biological hunger, but it is a hunger with a purpose. To survive the thousands of miles ahead, they must transform their bodies into efficient storage vessels. They seek out the last, richest blooms of the season, the late summer wildflowers that act as essential fueling stations along their path. Imagine a field of goldenrod, its heavy yellow plumes swaying gently in a cool breeze, or the delicate purple stars of wild asters. For the monarch, these are more than just beautiful flowers. They are life-giving reservoirs of nectar. As the butterfly lands, its delicate legs grip the petals with surprising strength. It unfurls its proboscis, a tiny straw-like tongue, and drinks deeply of the sugary liquid hidden within. This nectar is a concentrated source of energy, but the monarch does not burn it all at once. Instead, through a marvel of internal chemistry, the butterfly converts these sugars into lipids or fats. These lipids are stored in the abdomen, which becomes the butterfly's most important organ during the journey. If you were to look closely at a monarch preparing for migration, you might notice that its abdomen appears slightly more rounded, more substantial than those of its summer ancestors. This is their fat body, a specialized tissue that serves as a biological battery. These reserves are remarkably efficient. Gram for gram, the fat stored in a monarch's abdomen provides more than twice the energy of carbohydrates. It is a dense, high-performance fuel that will not only power their flight, but will also be their primary source of sustenance during the long, dormant months of winter. Without this golden layer of fat, the journey would be impossible. They are literal lightweights, yet they carry with them everything they need to survive an entire season of fasting. As you settle deeper into your bed, think of this quiet accumulation of strength. There is a wisdom in this preparation, a recognition that before the great effort of the journey, there must be a time of gathering and rest. The butterflies do not rush. They move from flower to flower with a calm, methodical grace, ensuring their reserves are full before the winds call them upward. Finally, the morning arrives when the conditions are perfect. The sun rises, casting a long golden light across the meadow, and the temperature reaches that precise point where the monarch's flight muscles can function with ease. There is a subtle shift in the air, a whisper of a northern breeze that promises a tailwind. One by one, then in small groups, the butterflies begin to lift off. They do not fly in a straight, frantic line. Instead, they rise in soft, spiraling circles, catching the air currents and testing the lift of their wings. This is the first takeoff, the moment the aerial path truly begins. They leave behind the fields where they were born, rising higher and higher, until they are mere specks of orange against the vast blue canvas of the sky, beginning a voyage that will take them across the curve of the earth. As the butterflies rise higher into the cool autumn air, they are beginning one of the most incredible journeys in the natural world. To us, a few miles here might be a short walk, but for the monarch, the road ahead stretches for nearly 3,000 miles. Imagine starting in the colorful forests of southern Canada, or the lush fields near the Great Lakes, and setting your sights on a destination deep in the heart of Mexico. It is a distance that spans the entire continent, crossing over bustling cities, vast rivers, and silent mountain ranges. A single monarch weighs less than a paperclip, barely half a gram, yet it possesses a stamina that defies its fragile appearance. They will travel between 50 and 100 miles in a single day, flapping their wings millions of times as they push toward the southwest. This is not just a flight. It is an epic migration on a scale that rivals the great migrations of the Serengeti or the massive whales of the deep sea. But there is a detail in this journey that makes it even more miraculous, something that scientists and dreamers alike find difficult to fully grasp. These individual butterflies, these tiny travelers you are imagining now, have never been to Mexico before. They were born in a field in the north, perhaps in a garden in Ohio or a meadow in Ontario. They have no memories of the high-altitude forests where their ancestors spent the winter. They have no elders to follow, no experienced guides to show them the landmarks or the mountain passes. They are flying toward a place they have never seen, driven by a destination they have never visited. It is as if they are born with a map already etched into their very being, a silent pull toward a home they have only known through the legacy of their DNA. This realization brings a sense of wonder to their flight. Every flap of their wings is an act of deep biological faith, a step into the unknown that is guided by a certainty we are only beginning to understand. They do not get lost. They do not wander aimlessly. They move with a singular, quiet purpose, navigating the vastness of the sky with a precision that matches our most advanced technology. It leads us to wonder, how can a creature with a brain no larger than a pinhead find its way across a continent? How do they stay on course when the winds shift or the clouds hide the horizon? To find the answer, we must look closer at the silent tools they carry within themselves, biological instruments that allow them to read the world in ways we can barely imagine. To find their way across the vast open stretches of the continent, the monarch looks to the most ancient and reliable guide in our sky, the sun. Even on a journey of thousands of miles, this tiny creature relies on the golden light of the afternoon and the pale glow of the morning to keep its bearing. Scientists call this system a time-compensated sun compass. It is a phrase that sounds complex, but in the quiet of the butterfly's world, it is a beautiful, seamless integration of light and time. Imagine for a moment the sun as it moves through the sky. In the morning, it rises in the east. By midday, it sits high above the horizon, and as the evening approaches, it sinks into the west. If a monarch simply flew toward the sun all day, it would find itself traveling in a wide, sweeping arc, eventually ending up far from its destination in the mountains of Mexico. To maintain a steady course toward the southwest, the butterfly must constantly adjust its flight path based on the hour of the day. It is a feat of navigation that requires a constant awareness of where the sun is and where it ought to be. As the sun moves across the sky at a steady pace of approximately 15 degrees per hour, the monarch's internal systems are performing a silent, continuous calculation. If it is early in the morning, the butterfly knows the sun must be positioned at a specific angle to its left to maintain its southerly heading. As the hours pass and the sun climbs higher, the butterfly shifts its body, keeping the sun in the correct relative position. By the late afternoon, the sun must stay to its right. This allows the monarch to maintain a remarkably straight line, slicing through the air with a precision that seems almost impossible for such a small being. This process requires two very specific biological tools, a way to see the sun and a way to tell time. For many years, researchers believed that the clock part of this compass was located deep within the butterfly's brain. They assumed the brain processed the light signals from the eyes and compared them to a central internal rhythm, much like a pilot checking a watch while looking at a compass. However, nature often hides its most brilliant designs in the most delicate and unexpected places. As you rest and let your mind drift, consider the monarch's antennae. We often think of antennae as simple sensors for touch or smell, two thin, elegant threads waving in the breeze. But for the monarch, these antennae are so much more. They are highly specialized instruments filled with thousands of sensory cells that act as a gateway to the world around them. It was recently discovered that these antennae are not just for feeling the wind or smelling the sweetness of a flower. They are the very place where the monarch keeps its sense of time. Within these thin, dark structures, there are biological clocks that operate with incredible autonomy, ticking away the seconds and hours of the day. The antennae do not just wait for the brain to tell them what to do. They are active participants in the journey. This partnership between the eyes, the antennae, and the brain creates a symphony of biological engineering that keeps the monarch on the path to its winter home. Even as the wind pushes against them or the landscape below changes from green forests to dusty plains, the sun and the clock in their antennae remain their constant companions, guiding them through the long, quiet hours of flight. This discovery that the antennae themselves house the clock changed everything we knew about how these delicate creatures find their way across a continent. For a long time, it was assumed that the butterfly's brain was the sole command center, the only place capable of processing the passage of time. But nature is often more decentralized and elegant than we first imagined. Scientists found that the antennae are actually autonomous. They possess their own light-sensing cells and their own molecular rhythms that tick away regardless of what the brain is doing. In a series of gentle experiments, researchers found that if the antenna were covered with a dark coating, the butterfly's sense of direction vanished, even though its eyes could still see the sun perfectly. Without the antennae to tell it what time it was, the sun's position became a meaningless point of light. The butterfly could no longer calculate which way was south. This revealed that the antennae are not just sensors for scent or wind, but are primary navigators, a set of dual clocks that must be synchronized with the sun to provide a steady heading. Imagine the precision of this biological GPS. While we rely on satellites orbiting thousands of miles above the Earth and complex electronic circuits in our pockets, the Monarch carries everything it needs in two structures no thicker than a human hair. These antennae are constantly bathed in the shifting colors of the sky, and they translate that light into a steady, pulsing rhythm. It is a quiet, internal metronome that guides them through the vast open spaces of the Midwestern plains and over the rolling hills of the South. Inside the cells of these antennae, specific proteins are created and then broken down in a cycle that lasts exactly 24 hours. This molecular dance is so sensitive that it can detect the subtle changes in light that occur as the seasons shift, helping the butterfly understand not just the time of day, but the time of year. This internal clock allows the monarch to be incredibly resilient, even if a strong gust of wind pushes them off course, or if they spend an hour resting in a field of wildflowers, they do not lose their way. As soon as they take flight again, the clock in their antenna tells them exactly how much the sun has moved, and they adjust their angle of flight accordingly. It is a seamless, silent correction that happens thousands of times throughout their journey. It is comforting to think of such a small creature possessing such a profound sense of place and time. They are never truly lost. They are always exactly where they need to be, moving in harmony with the rotation of the earth. But the sky is not always clear. There are days when the sun is hidden behind a thick veil of gray clouds, and the golden light is replaced by a soft, muted gloom. On these days, when the sun compass cannot be seen, the monarch does not simply stop and wait. It has other ways of feeling the world, hidden maps that don't rely on light at all, but on the very pull of the planet itself. As they fly through the mist and the clouds, they tap into a different kind of sense, one that connects them to the heart of the earth. Even when the world turns gray and the golden disk of the sun is tucked away behind heavy, moisture-laden clouds, the monarch is not blind to its path. It carries within its tiny frame a secondary map, one that doesn't rely on sight, but on the very pulse of the planet. This is the sense of magnetoreception, a biological compass that allows the butterfly to feel the Earth's magnetic field. While we require a needle of magnetized metal to point us toward the poles, the monarch has specialized proteins in its eyes and antennae that react to the magnetic pull of the Earth. It is as if they are tuned into a frequency we cannot hear, a silent hum that vibrates through the air, telling them which way is south and which way is north. This magnetic sense is particularly fascinating because it is tied to the light. Scientists have found that the monarch's magnetic compass is light-dependent, meaning it needs a certain amount of short wavelength light to function. But even on the darkest, most overcast days, the butterfly is rarely in total darkness. To our eyes, a thick layer of clouds might look like a solid, impenetrable ceiling of gray, but to a monarch, the sky remains a source of information. They are able to see ultraviolet light, a spectrum that is invisible to humans. Ultraviolet rays have a shorter wavelength, allowing them to pierce through the thickest clouds and mist. Even when the sun is completely obscured, the monarch can detect the polarization of this hidden light. It's as if they can see the grain of the sky. A subtle texture that reveals the sun's position behind the veil. This allows their internal sun compass to keep ticking, even when the world feels dim and quiet. With these two systems working in harmony, the magnetic pull of the Earth and the secret glow of ultraviolet light, the monarch is never truly lost. They are guided by forces that are invisible to us, moving through a world that is much more vibrant and structured than it appears. This constant flow of information allows them to maintain their heading with incredible accuracy, day after day, mile after mile. But navigation is only one part of the miracle. To travel thousands of miles, a creature must do more than just know where it is going. It must have the physical endurance to get there. Consider for a moment the weight of a monarch butterfly. It is less than a gram, about the same as a single paperclip or a small feather. Yet, this tiny, delicate being is capable of flying across entire mountain ranges and over vast bodies of water. This isn't achieved through sheer brute force or constant, frantic flapping. If a monarch were to flap its wings continuously for the entire journey, its tiny muscles would quickly exhaust their energy. Instead, they have mastered the art of efficiency. Their wings are not just tools for movement, they are perfectly designed instruments of aerodynamics, allowing them to harness the very energy of the atmosphere to stay aloft with minimal effort. As they move south, they become part of the air itself, learning to dance with the wind rather than fight against it. As these tiny travelers move, they aren't just flying in straight lines independently of one another. They are following an invisible map, a series of aerial highways that have been used for thousands of years. Imagine North America as a wide, open bowl. Butterflies from the rocky shores of the Atlantic, the deep forests of Ontario, and the vast waving grasses of the Midwest all begin their journey at different times and from different places. At first, they are scattered, lonely flashes of orange against the cooling blue of the autumn sky. But as they move further south, their paths begin to draw closer together. This is what scientists call the funneling effect. It is a beautiful natural gathering that happens every year. They move toward the center of the continent, drawn by the geography of the land and the subtle shifts in the climate. Eventually, this massive, multinational population of butterflies begins to converge over the central United States. They funnel down through the Great Plains, creating a concentrated stream of life that narrows significantly as it reaches the Texas coast. In this region, the numbers can become truly staggering. What started as individual insects in backyard gardens becomes a singular, focused migration of millions. Take a moment now to breathe deeply and visualize this scene. Imagine you are standing in a quiet, golden field under a pale autumn sun. The air is cool and still. High above you, the sky isn't empty. It is filled with thousands upon thousands of monarchs moving together like a soft, living river. They look like orange leaves caught in a gentle breeze, drifting silently and steadily toward the horizon. There is no sound of engines, no rush of wind, just the quiet, persistent movement of a million delicate wings. It is a slow-motion parade, a soft orange cloud that stretches as far as your eyes can see. Let that image settle in your mind, the peacefulness of a journey that is both immense in scale and incredibly delicate in its execution. You are safe and warm, watching this silent river of life flow toward its winter home. To maintain this pace over such a vast distance, the monarchs have developed a strategy that relies on the very physics of the atmosphere. They realize that to survive a 3,000-mile flight, they cannot rely on strength alone. They must be clever. They don't simply beat their wings against the air with constant effort. Instead, they use the air to carry them. This is the secret to their endurance. By shifting from active flapping to a graceful, steady glide, they can travel dozens of miles while barely moving a muscle. They have become masters of the sky's hidden architecture, seeking out the invisible currents that will lift them higher and push them further toward their destination. This transition from active flight to effortless soaring is what allows a creature weighing less than a gram to achieve one of the greatest migrations on Earth. It is a lesson in patience and efficiency, a way of moving through the world by leaning into the natural forces already at work. To understand how they achieve this, we have to look at the air itself. The atmosphere is not a static void. It is a moving, breathing ocean of gases, and the monarch has learned to navigate its currents with the skill of a master sailor. As the morning sun begins to bake the dark soil of a farmer's field or the asphalt of a quiet highway, that heat is transferred to the air directly above it. This warm air becomes lighter than the cool air around it and begins to rise in a narrow, invisible column known as a thermal. For a monarch, finding one of these thermals is like stepping onto a gentle upward escalator. Instead of the tiring, repetitive motion of flapping, the butterfly simply stretches its wings wide. It enters the rising column and begins to circle. If you were watching from below, you would see them spiraling upward, higher and higher. Without a single beat of their orange and black wings, they are being cradled by the warmth of the earth. These thermals can carry them thousands of feet into the air, far above the trees and the hills, into a space where the wind is steadier and the view is vast. It is a slow, meditative ascent, a way of gaining height by simply existing within the flow of the world. The physics of their wings are perfectly suited for this effortless travel. When a monarch glides, it doesn't hold its wings perfectly flat. Instead, it tilts them slightly upward into a shallow V shape, a configuration aeronautical engineers call a dihedral. This simple geometric trick provides a natural self-righting mechanism. If a stray puff of wind tilts the butterfly to one side, the dihedral shape automatically creates more lift on the lower wing, gently pushing the insect back to a level position. It is a built-in stabilizer that allows them to remain calm and steady, even in a changing breeze. They don't have to fight the air. They have evolved to be a part of it. This mastery of aerodynamics is not just a matter of convenience. It is a matter of survival. Every time a monarch flaps its wings, it uses up a small portion of the lipids, the fats, it has stored in its abdomen. These fats are the butterfly's battery, and they must last not only for the remainder of the journey, but for the several months of winter that follow. If they were to flap their way across the entire continent, they would arrive in Mexico exhausted and depleted, with no fuel left to sustain them through the cold. By soaring on the thermals, they conserve their energy, protecting their internal reserves as if they were a precious treasure. They are traveling for free, using the energy of the sun and the movement of the atmosphere to propel them south. Once they reach the height of a thermal, they break away from the spiral and begin a long, elegant glide. They can travel for many miles this way, descending at such a shallow angle that it feels as though they are simply floating on the skin of the sky. It is a peaceful silent progression, a journey measured in miles and hours of stillness. You can imagine the sensation of that height, the cool, thin air, the silence of the upper atmosphere, and the steady, unwavering pull of the south. However, this reliance on the sun's warmth means their travel day has a natural, predictable rhythm. As the sun begins to dip toward the horizon and the golden hour sets in, the earth begins to lose its heat. The thermals that provided such easy lift throughout the afternoon start to weaken and eventually disappear. Without the rising air to support them, the monarchs must begin their descent. They cannot fly safely in the dark, and their tiny muscles cannot function if they become too cold. As the air turns crisp and the light turns to amber, millions of butterflies begin to look toward the trees. They need to find a place to settle, a sanctuary where they can tuck their wings away and wait for the world to warm up again. The search for a safe place to rest is just as important as the flight itself. Leading them to specific groves and gardens that offer the protection they need to survive the night. As the monarchs drift down from the high currents of the sky, their descent is guided by the vibrant colors of the landscape below. They are searching for more than just a place to sleep. They are looking for the fuel that will sustain them for the thousands of miles ahead. This network of fueling stations is known to scientists as a nectar corridor, a continuous path of blooming flowers that acts as a biological safety net across the continent. You can imagine these corridors as a series of stepping stones in a vast green sea, each one offering a vital rest stop for the weary travelers. During this late stage of the year, when many plants have already begun to wither and prepare for winter, a few specific species of wildflowers become the heroes of the migration. The most important among them are the goldenrods and the asters. As you settle deeper into your blankets, imagine a field of goldenrod, its heavy, plume-like branches dusted with a brilliant sunshine yellow. These flowers are rich in high-quality nectar, providing the concentrated sugars the monarchs need. Beside them, the wild asters bloom in shades of pale violet, deep purple, and snowy white, their daisy-like faces turned toward the fading sun. For a monarch, these flowers are like an oasis in a desert. The relationship between the butterfly and these late-blooming flowers is a beautiful example of biodiversity in action. The flowers provide the nectar, and in return, the butterflies act as pollinators, carrying grains of pollen from one bloom to another as they feed. This ensures that the wildflowers will return again next year, continuing the cycle for the next generation of travelers. This nectar is not just a quick snack. It is the raw material for the butterfly's survival. Through a remarkable internal process, the monarch converts the sucrose and glucose from the nectar into lipids, dense packets of fat stored within its abdomen. This is their primary energy source, a biological battery that must last them through the long flight and the many months of winter dormancy in the Mexican mountains. This is why habitat conservation is so deeply important. In a world where wild meadows are often replaced by manicured lawns or industrial landscapes, these nectar corridors can become fragmented. When a monarch finds a garden filled with native wildflowers instead of a mown patch of grass, It is finding a lifeline. By preserving even small patches of wildness, a corner of a backyard, a roadside verge, or a city park, we provide the fueling stations that allow this miracle of migration to continue. It is a reminder that every small piece of the ecosystem is connected, and even the smallest flower can play a role in a journey that spans a continent. As the golden hour deepens and the shadows of the trees stretch long across the fields, the monarchs take their final sips of nectar for the day. The air is beginning to lose the last of the afternoon's warmth, and a subtle, crisp chill begins to settle over the meadow. The butterflies become slower, their movements more deliberate as their body temperatures start to drop with the fading light. They can no longer rely on the sun to keep their wing muscles nimble. The time for feeding is over, and the instinct for safety takes over. They begin to rise from the flowers, fluttering softly toward the dark, protective silhouettes of the nearby trees. They are looking for a place where they can gather together, seeking the shelter of the leaves and the company of their kind to weather the coming night. As the twilight deepens into a soft velvet blue, the monarchs seek out the safety of the trees. They do not spend the night on the exposed faces of flowers or low in the grasses, where the dew might weigh them down. Instead, they gather in what scientists call roost trees. These are often large, sturdy trees with dense foliage, maples, oaks, or pines that offer a buffer against the evening wind. There is something truly remarkable about a monarch roost. As the light fades, more and more butterflies arrive, guided by an invisible signal to the same specific branches. They begin to cluster, clinging to the undersides of leaves and to one another. They hang with their wings closed, revealing the muted, grayish-tan undersides that look remarkably like shriveled, dead leaves. This is a masterclass in camouflage. To a passing owl or a hungry nocturnal predator, a branch covered in hundreds of resting monarchs looks like nothing more than a patch of autumn foliage. This clustering behavior serves a vital purpose beyond just hiding. It is a strategy for survival against the cold. While butterflies are cold-blooded and cannot generate their own internal body heat like mammals do, the sheer density of their numbers creates a slight thermal advantage. By huddling together, they reduce the amount of surface area exposed to the chilling night air. The butterflies in the center of the cluster are shielded from the wind and the frost by the bodies of their companions. In the quiet of the night, if you were to stand beneath such a tree, you might hear the faint, dry rustle of thousands of tiny legs shifting for a better grip, a sound like the softest whisper of paper. The night brings with it a quiet tension. For these delicate travelers, a sudden cold snap is a grave danger. If their body temperature drops below 40 degrees Fahrenheit, they become paralyzed, unable to move or even hold on to their perch. If it drops below freezing, the delicate fluids in their bodies can crystallize. This is why the choice of a roost tree is so critical. The canopy of the tree acts like a thermal blanket, trapping the heat of the earth and preventing it from escaping into the clear night sky. As you lie there, imagine the stillness of that roost, thousands of tiny hearts beating slowly in the dark, waiting for the return of the sun. The world around them is silent, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth and pine needles. They are motionless, suspended in a state of rest that preserves every ounce of the fat they work so hard to store during the day. When the first pale light of dawn begins to filter through the branches, the roost remains still. The butterflies are too cold to move at first. They are waiting for the sun's rays to touch their wings. As the golden light hits the cluster, a transformation begins. You might see a single wing twitch, then another. This is shivering, a rapid vibration of the flight muscles that generates just enough heat to jumpstart their metabolism. Slowly, the cluster begins to break apart. One by one, the monarchs open their wings to the sun, turning themselves into tiny solar panels to soak up the morning warmth. Once their internal temperature reaches about 55 degrees, they're ready. With a collective flutter that sounds like a sudden gust of wind through dry leaves, the roost empties. They take to the sky once more, refreshed and ready to continue their long journey toward the horizon, moving with the rhythm of the changing season. The journey south is not just a test of endurance, but a master class in navigating the invisible currents of the atmosphere. As the monarchs leave their roosts and climb back into the blue, they are looking for more than just a clear path. They are looking for a ride. To a creature that weighs less than a paperclip, the wind is everything. It can be a wall that stops them in their tracks, or it can be a silent river that carries them hundreds of miles in a single day. Scientists have observed that monarchs are particularly skilled at reading the approach of weather systems. They often wait for the arrival of a cold front, a mass of cooler, denser air moving down from the north. While we might associate cold fronts with a chill in the air, for a migrating butterfly, these fronts are a gift. As the front moves through, it creates a strong, steady tailwind blowing toward the south. By hitching a ride on these northerly winds, the monarchs can significantly increase their ground speed while using very little of their own energy. It is a form of aerial surfing, where they tilt their wings to catch the breeze, allowing the earth to slip away beneath them with effortless grace. Think of the efficiency of this movement. On a calm day, a monarch might fly at about 5 to 10 miles per hour. But with a strong tailwind at their back, they can reach speeds of 25 or even 30 miles per hour. They are travelers who know how to work with the world rather than against it. They understand the rhythm of the seasons and the flow of the air, moving in harmony with the great movements of the planet. However, the weather is not always a friend. The monarch carries within its tiny brain an ancient set of instructions for safety. If the wind shifts and begins to blow strongly from the south, a headwind, the butterflies will often drop low to the ground, seeking shelter in the tall grass or behind bushes. They know that fighting against a strong wind will quickly deplete the fat reserves they need to survive the winter. Similarly, rain is a signal to stop. A monarch's wings are remarkably durable, but they are not designed for heavy downpours. A single raindrop is a heavy burden for a butterfly, and a wet wing is a heavy wing. When the clouds darken and the first drops begin to fall, thousands of monarchs will descend simultaneously, clinging to the undersides of leaves or the bark of trees. They wait in a patient, focused silence, listening to the drum of the rain above them, protected by their instinct to stay grounded until the sky is clear. As the days pass and the weather systems cycle through, the landscape beneath them begins to change. The vast plains and the rolling hills of the north are gradually replaced by different textures and colors. The air begins to feel different, drier perhaps, or tinged with the scent of dust and stone. They are crossing the final stretches of the open country, nearing the end of the longest leg of their journey. The horizon ahead is no longer flat. It is beginning to rise, crinkling upward into the rugged, majestic peaks of the Sierra Madre. They are entering the final stage of their migration, moving toward the heart of Mexico. The path is narrowing now, leading them away from the wide open spaces and toward the high-altitude forests that have been their destination for thousands of years. The journey is nearly over, and the sanctuary is almost within reach. As the horizon lifts, the monarchs find themselves entering a unique geological wonder known as the Trans-Mexican Volcanic Belt. This massive mountain range, stretching across central southern Mexico, acts as the final gateway of their journey. It is a land shaped by ancient fire, where volcanoes once rose from the earth to create a high-altitude plateau that stands like a fortress above the surrounding plains. For the butterflies, this marks a profound shift in their environment. The warm, humid air of the lowlands begins to fade, replaced by the crisp, invigorating chill of the mountains. Imagine the sensation of climbing. As the butterflies ascend, the landscape below them transforms. The dusty greens of the scrubland and the vibrant colors of the tropical plains give way to the deep, somber hues of the pine and oak forests. The atmosphere becomes thinner and clearer. Up here, the light has a different quality, softer perhaps, filtered through the morning mists that often cling to the rugged slopes like a silver veil. Let yourself settle a little deeper into your bed now, feeling the weight of your limbs as you relax. As we follow the monarchs into these heights, take a slow, quiet breath. Imagine that cool mountain air, scented with the fragrance of pine needles and damp earth, filling the room around you. There is a profound stillness in these high places, a sense of being tucked away from the rest of the busy world. The frantic energy of the long migration begins to settle into a focused, rhythmic pulse. They are almost home. The butterflies are now navigating a vertical world. They are flying at altitudes of nearly 10,000 feet above sea level, far higher than most insects ever venture. At this height, the temperature is significantly lower than it was just a few days ago. This change is intentional and necessary. The monarchs are seeking a very specific microclimate, a place where it is cold enough to slow their metabolism into a state of semi-hibernation, but not so cold that the delicate fluids in their bodies will freeze. They are looking for the perfect balance, a thermal sanctuary where they can rest safely for the months to come. As they weave through the mountain passes, they are no longer searching for nectar or milkweed. Their focus has shifted entirely to the architecture of the forest. But they are not looking for just any trees. While the lower slopes are covered in sturdy oaks and sprawling pines, the monarchs continue to climb higher, pushed by an ancient, inherited map toward the very peaks of the mountains. They are searching for a specific evergreen, a tree that provides the exact density and protection they need to survive the winter. They are looking for the Oyamel firs, the sacred guardians of the forest that wait for them, hidden high up in the clouds. The Oyamel fir, known scientifically as Abies religiosa, is a tree of remarkable grace and singular importance. Its name, religiosa, or sacred fir, comes from the way its branches often grow in a shape reminiscent of hands held in prayer or perhaps because its boughs are traditionally used in local religious festivals. To the monarchs, however, these trees are more than a symbol. They are the only place in the entire world where they can safely rest their wings after such a grueling journey. These firs are specialists of the heights, growing only in the thin, cool air of the high-altitude mountains, usually between 7,000 and 11,000 feet above sea level. They are the heart of a very rare ecosystem, a series of mountaintop islands of green surrounded by a sea of warmer lowlands. The oyamel fir is the perfect guardian for a sleeping butterfly. Its needles are short, flat, and grow in a dense, lush pattern that creates a thick, protective canopy. This canopy acts like a natural roof, shielding the forest floor and the trunks of the trees from the harsh elements of the high mountains. When you look at an oyamel fir, you see a structure designed by nature to trap heat and block the wind. For an insect that weighs less than a paperclip, a single gust of freezing wind or a sudden downpour could be fatal. The oyamel provides a buffer, a gentle embrace that keeps the temperature within a very narrow, life-saving range. As the monarchs arrive, they do not simply land on any branch they find. They are looking for the heart of the grove where the trees grow closest together. There is a profound sense of arrival in these moments. After 3,000 miles of navigating by the sun and the stars, of dodging storms and crossing vast plains, they have found the exact coordinates etched into their genetic code. They have reached the overwintering sanctuaries, places like the Sierra Cinque or El Rosario, where the air is still and the world seems to hold its breath. These forests are a vital part of the local ecosystem, acting as a giant sponge that captures moisture from the mountain mists and slowly releases it into the watersheds below. The trees and the butterflies exist in a delicate ancient partnership. The forest provides the sanctuary, and in return, the presence of the monarchs has made these mountains a place of global wonder, ensuring the protection of the trees themselves. Imagine the butterflies now descending through the cool, fragrant air. They begin to settle on the dark green needles of the oyamel firs. At first, it is just a few, then hundreds, then thousands. They cling to the bark and the boughs, their orange wings folded, blending into the shadows of the forest. The long flight is over. The frantic beating of wings is replaced by a soft, rhythmic stillness. The monarchs have found their sanctuary, nestled deep within the sacred groves, where the mountain itself seems to wrap them in a blanket of evergreen and silence. You can almost feel that same stillness now, the quiet of the high forest settling over you as the butterflies begin the long, peaceful wait for spring. Inside these high-altitude groves, a very specific and delicate phenomenon occurs, something scientists call a microclimate. While the world outside the forest might experience biting winds or fluctuating temperatures, the interior of the oyamel sanctuary remains remarkably stable. The dense canopy of the fir trees serves two vital, simultaneous purposes. First, it acts as a great umbrella. In the high mountains of Michoacan, winter rains and even occasional snow can be a grave threat. If a monarch's wings become wet and the temperature then drops, the water can freeze, damaging their delicate tissues or causing them to fall from the trees. The thick, overlapping layers of evergreen needles catch this moisture, keeping the butterflies beneath them dry and safe. But the forest is more than just a shield against the rain. It is also a thermal blanket. Throughout the day, the earth and the massive trunks of the oyamel trees absorb the heat from the sun. As night falls and the mountain air turns cold, the thick canopy prevents that warmth from escaping back into space. It traps a layer of air that is several degrees warmer than the air in the open clearings nearby. This tiny difference in temperature is the margin between life and death. The forest creates a pocket of protection, a gentle cradle that keeps the butterflies in a state of suspended animation. This state is a careful biological balancing act. To survive the winter, the monarchs must maintain a body temperature that is exactly right. If the air becomes too warm, their metabolism speeds up. They begin to burn through the precious fat reserves they worked so hard to store during their journey south. If they use that energy too quickly, they won't have enough left to begin the flight back north in the spring. However, if the temperature drops too low, below the freezing point for too long, their internal fluids could crystallize. The sanctuary provides the perfect refrigerator effect. It is cool enough to slow their heart rates and breathing to a crawl, preserving their energy, yet insulated enough to keep them from freezing. As you imagine this quiet, temperature-controlled world, the visual transformation of the forest is breathtaking. When the monarchs first arrive, the trees are deep, dark green. But as millions more settle into the grove, the landscape begins to shift. The orange and black of their folded wings start to carpet the branches, layer upon layer, until the green of the needles is completely hidden. From a distance, the trees no longer look like evergreens. They appear to be draped in heavy velvet robes of autumn colors. The clusters are so dense that the very shape of the trees begins to change, the sharp outlines of the firs softening under the weight of a living, breathing tapestry. It is a spectacle of such immense scale that it feels like the forest itself has been transformed into a single, sleeping organism, hushed and waiting under the protection of the mountain mist. As the clusters grow larger, the physical reality of their presence begins to manifest in surprising ways. We often think of a butterfly as weightless, a creature so light it could land on a blade of grass without bending it. And individually, this is true. A single monarch weighs less than a gram, roughly the same as a single paper clip or a small feather. But nature has a way of turning the infinitesimal into the monumental through the power of numbers. In these high-altitude sanctuaries, a single oyamel fir branch may become the resting place for tens of thousands of butterflies. As they huddle together for warmth, their collective weight adds up pound by pound until it reaches a tipping point. The sturdy ancient wood of the fir tree, built to withstand mountain winds and heavy snows, begins to groan under the weight of these delicate travelers. You might see a massive limb, several inches thick, slowly bowing toward the earth, curving into a gentle arc as it supports the living burden. It is a strange and beautiful sight, the heavy, solid architecture of the forest, yielding to the soft, fragile bodies of the insects. The branches hang like pendulums, weighted down by the sheer density of life. Take a slow breath now, imagining that same quiet stillness. In the heart of the colony, the silence of the mountain is not quite absolute. If you were to stand perfectly still at the base of one of these trees, you would hear a sound unlike anything else on earth. It is not the buzzing of bees or the chirping of crickets. Instead, it is a sound often described as the whisper of the woods. When a slight breeze moves through the trees, or when a few thousand butterflies shift their positions at once, their wings brush against one another. It creates a soft, dry rustle, the sound of millions of tiny sheets of parchment rubbing together, or the gentle pitter-patter of a very light rain falling on dry leaves. This sound is the heartbeat of the colony. It is a rhythmic, paper-like sigh that fills the air, a reminder that even in their deepest rest, these creatures are alive. They are held in a state of semi-hibernation, a biological pause where time seems to stretch and slow down. In this state, their movements are rare and deliberate, as if they are dreaming of the long journey they have just completed. They cling to the bark and to each other with tiny, hooked tarsi, their legs locked in place so they can sleep without fear of falling. The air in the grove remains cool and moist, acting as a preservative for their tiny bodies. Because they are not flying, they do not need to eat. They exist in a suspended reality, their heartbeats slowed to a fraction of their normal rhythm, their breathing almost imperceptible. They have become part of the tree itself, a living extension of the oyamel fir. As you settle deeper into your own rest, visualize the orange clusters hanging like heavy velvet fruit from the boughs, perfectly still, perfectly safe, waiting for the sun to eventually return. For now, there is only the cool mountain air, the bowing branches, and the soft, rhythmic rustle of wings in the dark. In this deep, cool sanctuary, the monarchs have entered a state of profound biological economy. Their survival now depends entirely on the art of doing nothing. Throughout their long journey south, they were not just flying, they were fueling. Every nectar-rich aster and goldenrod they visited helped them build up thick reserves of lipids, or fats, stored within their abdomens. Now, in the thin air of the oyamel forests, these fat stores act as their only life support. The cold mountain air is their greatest ally in this effort. If the forest were too warm, the butterflies' metabolisms would speed up, causing them to burn through their energy reserves too quickly. By staying in a state of semi-torpor, a kind of suspended animation, they can stretch those few milligrams of fat to last for 5 or 6 months. It is a delicate balance of physics and biology. They must remain cool enough to stay still, but just warm enough to keep their cellular systems from freezing. They are like tiny living batteries, holding onto their charge until the world begins to thaw. Take a deep, slow breath, imagining the stillness of that forest. The butterflies remain huddled together, barely moving for days or even weeks at a time. However, even in this state of rest, they have one essential need: water. While they do not need to eat, they must stay hydrated to prevent their delicate tissues from drying out in the mountain air. On bright, clear days when the sun manages to pierce the canopy and warm the clusters, a few thousand butterflies will detach themselves from the boughs. They drift downward, a slow-motion cascade of orange, heading toward the small mountain streams and damp patches of earth that line the forest floor. This behavior is known as puddling. You can imagine the sight of a tiny, clear stream, its edges covered in a carpet of orange wings as the butterflies extend their proboscises to drink the cool, mineral-rich water. Once they have quenched their thirst, they slowly flap their way back up into the safety of the fir trees, returning to their clusters before the evening chill sets in. This cycle of stillness and occasional flight creates a rhythm that the people living in the valleys below have observed for centuries. To an outsider, the arrival of the monarchs is a scientific marvel, a feat of migration. But to the communities in the mountains of Michoacan, the timing of this arrival carries a much deeper, more spiritual meaning. As the first orange wings appear against the blue Mexican sky, usually in late October or early November, they signal the beginning of a sacred time. The butterflies are not seen merely as insects, but as messengers arriving exactly when the veil between worlds is said to be at its thinnest. In the local culture of the Purepecha and Mazahua people who have lived in these mountains for generations, the arrival of the monarchs is inextricably linked with the Day of the Dead, or Dia de los Muertos. As the butterflies begin to fill the sky in late October and early November, they are welcomed as the returning souls of loved ones who have passed away. There is a profound beauty in this timing. Just as families are preparing altars with candles, incense, and bright orange marigolds, the sky itself turns orange with the arrival of these delicate travelers. The marigolds, known as cempasúchil, are believed to guide the spirits home with their vibrant color and scent. And it is easy to see how the monarchs, with their matching hues, became part of this sacred narrative. When you imagine the quiet of the Oyamel forest, try to picture the local villages below, where the scent of copal incense drifts through the air and the paths are strewn with flower petals. For the people living here, the soft rustle of millions of wings isn't just a biological sound. It is the sound of a promise kept, a yearly return that symbolizes the persistence of the spirit and the cycle of life. The butterflies are seen as messengers, carrying the memories of the ancestors back to the living. This connection between the natural world and human tradition provides a sense of deep ancestral peace. It suggests that nothing is ever truly lost, and that even the smallest, most fragile life can bridge the gap between worlds. Take a moment now to settle deeper into your blankets, feeling the weight of your own body as it rests, much like the butterflies resting on those heavy, evergreen boughs. There is a great comfort in the idea of returning home, in being part of a rhythm that has continued for centuries without fail. The forest is a place of sanctuary, a quiet cathedral where time seems to slow down. For several months, the monarchs remain in this state of grace, huddled together against the mountain chill, protected by the trees and the traditions of the people who call this land home. But as the calendar turns and the deep winter of December and January begins to soften, a subtle shift occurs in the environment. It starts almost imperceptibly. The angle of the sun begins to change, casting a slightly different light through the canopy of the Oyamel firs. The nights, while still cold, lose some of their biting edge. Within the clusters, the butterflies remain still, but the internal biological clocks that guided them thousands of miles south are beginning to tick toward a new phase. The stillness of the sanctuary is about to be transformed. The fat reserves that the butterflies have guarded so carefully throughout the winter are still there, but the energy within them is beginning to stir. The long period of semi-hibernation is nearing its end. As the days grow longer by just a few minutes each afternoon, the monarchs sense the coming change in the air. The Methuselah generation, having survived the long flight and the mountain winter, is preparing for the final act of its incredible life. The forest, which has been a place of quiet rest and spiritual reflection, is quietly preparing for a spectacular awakening as the warmth of the sun returns to the high peaks. As February approaches, the high-altitude forests of Michoacan begin to undergo a subtle but profound change. The deep, biting chill of January starts to yield to a gentler warmth as the earth tilts back toward the sun. In these mountains, spring doesn't arrive with a sudden bloom of flowers, but with a shift in the light. The sun climbs higher each day, its rays finally reaching deep into the shadowed ravines where the oyamel firs grow thickest. If you were standing there in the stillness of the morning, you would see the forest floor still covered in shadows, the air crisp and thin. But as the sun crests the surrounding peaks, everything changes. The monarchs are cold-blooded creatures, meaning their ability to move is entirely dependent on the temperature of the air around them. Throughout the winter, they have stayed huddled in their dense clusters to conserve heat. But now, the sun's touch acts like a key turning in a lock. When a beam of direct sunlight hits a cluster of butterflies, the effect is mesmerizing. They don't wake up one by one. They wake up as a collective. As the temperature of their wing muscles reaches about 55 degrees Fahrenheit, they gain the ability to shiver and then to fly. Imagine the sight of a single branch, heavy with thousands of butterflies, suddenly coming to life. It begins as a ripple, a soft shimmering of orange and black against the dark green of the fir needles. Then, as if a signal has been given, the entire cluster explodes into the air. It looks like a waterfall of orange petals falling toward the earth, only to catch the wind and begin to soar upward. This is the great awakening of the colony. In February and March, the air in the sanctuary becomes thick with butterflies. They fill the sky in such numbers that they can actually cast shadows on the ground below, creating a flickering, dappled light that dances across the forest floor. Take a deep, slow breath and imagine that sight. Millions of orange wings catching the golden afternoon light, swirling in slow, graceful circles. The sound is no longer just a faint rustle. It is a soft, rhythmic hum, like the sound of a distant mountain stream or a light rain falling on dry leaves. It is a peaceful, hypnotic sound that fills the cathedral of the trees. This activity isn't just for show. The butterflies are responding to their internal biological clocks, which are sensing the increasing length of the days. This photoperiodism is a precise measurement of light. Their brains and antennae are processing the fact that the sun is staying up longer, signaling that the winter is over. The Methuselah generation, those incredible travelers who have lived for months in this high-altitude refuge, now feel a new instinct taking hold. The drive to rest is being replaced by a drive to move. They spend these warm afternoons flying to nearby mountain streams to drink. After months of living off their stored fat, they are thirsty. You might see thousands of them lining the edges of a small creek, their wings folded as they sip the cool, clear water. This hydration is essential for the next phase of their journey. They are preparing their bodies for the arduous task ahead. The stillness of the winter is gone, replaced by a sense of quiet, purposeful energy. The sanctuary is no longer just a place of survival. It has become a staging ground for one of the greatest departures in the natural world. As the sun sets and the air cools, they return to the trees, but they no longer huddle as tightly as they once did. They are ready. The rhythm of the forest has shifted, and the call of the north is beginning to whisper through the trees, urging them to begin the long journey back to where their story first began. As the warmth of the March sun penetrates the deep green canopy of the oyamel firs, a profound biological change occurs within the Methuselah butterflies. For the past 8 months, their bodies have been in a state of reproductive diapause, a kind of biological pause button that allowed them to focus every ounce of their energy on survival and long-distance flight. But now, as the days grow longer and the air grows sweet with the scent of early blooms, that button is finally released. The hormones that were suppressed during the long migration and the cold mountain winter begin to flow through their tiny systems. This is the final chapter for these weary travelers, and it is perhaps the most important one of all. Before they leave the sanctuary for good, the air is filled with a new kind of dance. Mating begins among the trees where they have spent the winter. It is a quiet, rhythmic process that ensures the continuation of their spectacular lineage. For the Methuselah generation, this is their final act of devotion to the future. They have survived the biting winds of the north, the predators of the Great Plains, and the freezing nights of the Mexican mountains. They have lived 8 times longer than their parents did, and 8 times longer than their children ever will. To think of a creature so small, weighing less than a gram, surviving for nearly 3/4 of a year while traversing a continent, is one of the most quiet, beautiful miracles of the natural world. Take a slow, deep breath and let yourself feel the weight of that endurance. Imagine those delicate orange wings. They are tattered now, perhaps a bit faded at the edges, showing the microscopic scars of 3,000 miles of travel and months of clinging to frozen bark. Yet, the instinct to move is stronger than the fatigue. As the mating concludes, the great exodus begins in earnest. They do not leave all at once, but in steady, shimmering waves, rising from the trees and following the mountain passes back toward the north. They are not returning to the far reaches of Canada, not yet. Their bodies, though heroic, are finally reaching the end of their natural span. Their specific goal is the southern United States, where the first sprouts of milkweed are just beginning to push through the warming soil of Texas and the Gulf Coast. They are flying toward the promise of spring, carrying the potential for the next generation within them. This first leg of the return journey is a race against time, a final graceful push of effort before they can finally rest. The forest behind them begins to grow quiet again, the orange clouds disappearing into the blue horizon, leaving the oyamel trees to stand in silence, waiting for the cycle to begin all over again. As they cross the border into the southern plains, the Methuselah generation begins to look for the green leaves that will become the nursery for the children who will carry their journey forward. As these weary travelers reach the fields of Texas and the Gulf Coast, they find themselves in a landscape that is waking up. The spring sun is gentle here, and the milkweed, the very plant that sustained them as tiny caterpillars so long ago, is just beginning to unfold its tender green leaves. This is the finish line of a magnificent, invisible race. The Methuselah generation, having lived for 8 or 9 months, finally finds the specific species of milkweed they need. With a delicate, deliberate grace, the females deposit their tiny cream-colored eggs on the underside of the leaves. Each egg is a promise, a tiny capsule of information and life that will carry the memory of the North within its cells. Once the eggs are laid, the work of the great migrants is complete. Their strength, which has been nothing short of miraculous, finally begins to fade. They do not die of disease or predation in these quiet moments. They simply reach the end of their natural clock. They settle into the tall grass or beneath the shade of a flowering shrub, their wings closing for the last time. There is a profound peace in this transition. They have seen the world from thousands of feet in the air, survived the mountain winters, and successfully returned the spark of their species to the lands where it can flourish once again. It is a quiet, natural conclusion to a life lived with incredible purpose. But the story does not pause. Within days, those tiny eggs hatch into the first generation of the new year, Generation 1. These butterflies are fundamentally different from their parents. They are the summer monarchs. Once again, they grow with astonishing speed, fueled by the lush spring milkweed that is now in its prime. When they finally emerge from their chrysalises, they are vibrant, strong, and full of energy, but they carry a different biological clock. They will not live for 8 months like their parents did. They will live for only 2 to 6 weeks. Their purpose is not to survive a winter, but to move the line forward, pushing the boundaries of their territory further into the heart of the continent. Imagine these new butterflies, fresh and strong, with wings that have never known a storm. They do not stay in the South. Even though they have never been further north than the field where they were born, an ancient genetic map begins to hum within them. They take flight, heading toward the Midwest and the Central Plains, following the blooming flowers as spring marches upward across the map. This is the beginning of the Great Relay. The Methuselah generation carried the torch for thousands of miles across mountains and borders, and now they have passed it to their children. This multi-generational cycle is a masterpiece of biological engineering. It ensures that while no single butterfly can make the entire round trip in a single year, the journey itself never truly ends. It is a continuous loop of life, drifting ever northward, one wing beat at a time. As the first generation settles into the central United States, they prepare to pass the baton once more, continuing a journey they did not start, but are destined to complete through their descendants. Take a moment to appreciate the rhythm of this relay, a slow, steady pulse of life moving across the earth as you drift deeper into your own quiet rest. As Generation 1 completes its short, purposeful life in the fields of the Midwest, the cycle of the monarch accelerates, moving with the warming breath of the season. These are the golden days of late spring and early summer, when the sun hangs high and the air is thick with the sweet, heavy scent of nectar. From the eggs laid by that first generation, a second generation emerges, and soon after, a third. These are the true summer monarchs. Unlike their long-lived ancestors who weathered the Mexican winter, these butterflies live in a beautiful, fleeting burst of activity. Their lives span only 2 to 6 weeks, a short window of time, but one filled with incredible intensity and drive. In these few weeks, they have one primary mission: to continue the expansion. They do not have time for the slow, meditative flight of the migration. They are the pioneers, the explorers of the mid-year. They move with a sense of quiet urgency, flying further north with every sunny day. It is a remarkable thing to consider that these individuals, at Generation 2 and Generation 3, have never seen the Great Lakes or the milkweed patches of Ontario. They have no elders to guide them, no maps to follow, and no memories of the lands their great-grandparents left behind months ago. How then do they know where to go? Scientists believe the directions are written into the very fabric of their being, a genetic compass passed down through their DNA. It is as if they are born with a celestial map pre-installed in their tiny brains. This instinct is so powerful that it overrides everything else. When they emerge from their chrysalises, they do not fly aimlessly. They feel the pull of the north. They follow the sun, sensing the lengthening days and the specific tilt of the earth, moving toward the cooler, lush landscapes where the milkweed is just beginning to reach its peak. It is a silent, internal command that whispers to them across the miles, guiding them over rivers, forests, and suburban gardens. Take a soft, deep breath now, imagining the steady rhythmic flap of these orange wings against a bright blue summer sky. There is no stress in their journey, only a natural flowing progression. As you settle deeper into your pillows, think of the way nature handles these complex tasks with such quiet efficiency. The world moves in cycles, and you are part of that same calm, predictable rhythm. By the time the third generation takes flight, the monarchs have reached the furthest edges of their northern range. They have returned to the meadows of New England, the prairies of the Dakotas, and the southern reaches of Canada. They have reclaimed the land of their ancestors. The relay is nearly complete. These butterflies are the descendants of the survivors, the great-grandchildren of the voyagers who started it all in the mountains of Mexico. They have filled the continent with color once again, fluttering through backyard gardens and wild meadows, pollinating flowers and ensuring the world remains vibrant and green. The cycle has come full circle. The fields that were empty and frozen in the winter are now bustling with life, a testament to the persistence of this tiny traveler. But as the height of summer passes and the first hints of autumn begin to touch the air, a slight cooling of the breeze, a subtle change in the light, a final, miraculous change is about to occur. The stage is set for the completion of the great journey, a feat of nature that defies explanation and invites us to marvel at the quiet wonders of the world. As the days grow shorter and the goldenrod begins to bloom in the late summer sun, the fourth generation of the year emerges from its jade-green chrysalis. This is the generation we met at the very beginning of our journey, the Methuselah generation. They are born not to live for a few weeks, but to carry the torch for 8 months. They are the ones who will fly the full 3,000 miles back to the Oyamel fir forests of Mexico, closing the great circle of life that their great-grandparents began a year ago. Think for a moment about the sheer scale of this miracle. A monarch butterfly weighs less than a single gram, about the same as a small paper clip or a single feather. Its wings are as thin as tissue paper, yet it possesses a resilience that rivals the strongest of travelers. It navigates across mountain ranges, over vast lakes, and through unpredictable storms, guided by a compass it cannot see and a destination it has never visited. It is a journey of faith, written in the language of biology and the memory of the steers. This tiny creature does not worry about the miles ahead. It simply follows the rhythm of the earth. It moves with the wind, rests when the sun sets, and trusts in the nectar of the flowers along the way. There is a profound peace in this persistence. It reminds us that even the smallest life has a purpose, a path, and the strength to reach its home. The great cycle of the monarch is a story of return, a reminder that everything in nature eventually finds its way back to where it belongs in its own time and at its own pace. As you lie here in the stillness of your room, let your thoughts drift like a butterfly on a gentle, cooling breeze. You have traveled thousands of miles in your mind tonight, following the orange and black wings across the breadth of a continent. Now, your journey is coming to an end as well. The world outside is quiet. The stars are fixed in their places, and the rhythm of your breath is the only sound in the air. Feel the weight of your body pressing softly into the mattress, as grounded and safe as a butterfly roosting in the deep green boughs of a fir tree. There is nothing left for you to do, nowhere else you need to be. The cycle of the day is complete, and the cycle of rest is beginning. Just like the monarchs waiting for the morning sun in the high mountains of Mexico, you are held in the gentle, protective embrace of the night. Nature is at rest, and so are you. The migration is over, the wings are still, and the forest is silent. Sleep now, knowing that the world will continue its beautiful, quiet work while you dream. May your rest be as deep as the mountain valleys and as peaceful as a summer meadow at dusk. Take one last slow breath, exhale, and drift away. Good night.